am by no means an expert on Golang, but I did a little bit of work with it this summer and I thought it was really cool. And I wanted to give a talk on how to get started with it. So another Who Am I slide. It's probably my third one today. For security, I like to do a lot of Windows internal stuff, Windows malware and tool development. I like to do networking, a lot of network security, setting up networks. Programming, I'm huge into programming, which is why I'm giving a programming talk. Other than security, I'm a diver at RIT. I'm going to try snowboarding and not falling down a mountain this year. I tried it a couple times last year. With quarantine, I've been playing a lot of video games. I like to hang out with friends. It's a little, you got to be safer with it nowadays than before, but you still like to get the job done. And so, agenda, what I'm going to talk about today. What is Golang, if you're unfamiliar with Golang? Why use Golang opposed to other languages? Basics on installing Golang. I'm going to do a little Hello World program to start off. I'm going to talk about how Golang handles basics such as variables, if and switch statements, etc. And then I'm going to provide some resources for you guys because there's a lot more than what I'm going to be talking about, but I just wanted to give a bit of an introduction for anyone who wanted to get started with it. So what is Golang? I just pulled this straight off their website. It's an open source programming language. It makes it simple, reliable, and efficient. So what exactly does that mean? Well, I'm going to get into that for why use it. There's a lot of benefits, and there are some cons to Golang, but I think a lot of the benefits are useful. It runs as a single process on the system. That's extremely helpful for certain red team aspects. Skipping down the red teaming, it's very good for red teaming in the fact that you can build for both operating systems or all operating systems. It runs on all three of the major operating systems, that being Windows, Linux, and Mac. It's extremely beneficial as a programmer or even a red teamer because it allows you to build to all these operating systems in one language. There's no dependencies once you build. It's all in that single binary. One of the cons is that the binaries are quite large compared to other ones. But I've heard ways around that, but I'm unsure of them. It's easy to restart your application because it's just one process. And it is an efficient and fast language. The way I would relate to it is it seems like it's Python and C at the same time, which is an interesting mix, but it's extremely helpful when you're coding it. It's easy to catch on if you know one or both of those languages. So simple install, say you're on Windows is completely different, but say you're on Linux, the docs at that link in the bottom left is really easy to install. You have to just untar the file and set a path variable in your bash profile. This allows you to just run the go command, and there's like go get, go build, go run, and this allows you to run your programs. It's not too terribly difficult to install. Make sure you put that path though, or you're going to have to do it every single time you start a terminal. So getting started with a basic Hello World program. So you either can run your code straight up using go run with the file name. So if I ran, say this was hello.go, I can do go run hello.go and it will run this main function. Or I can do go build hello.go and it will build everything, all the dependencies needed to build the program, and it'll pack it into one binary. And then you can just run that one binary with the ./ format of the file name. And you can give it parameters or whatever you need to give it. So now getting into some of the basics of Go, there's a lot of ways you can manipulate variables. It feels very Python-esque. You can manipulate variables. You can add strings, as I've shown there. You can do print statements. You can do number addition, all basic programming language stuff in Go, which is super nice. Also, when you're doing variables, you don't have to explicitly type them all the time, but you also can explicitly type them. As you see in the example in the bottom picture there's a lot of ways you can type in Go by either setting the variable straight up. You can set multiple variables like in a tuple, like Python, and you can declare what kind of variables they are. You can just initialize the variable. You can declare it without initializing it there with what type it is. And you can also use the colon equals is a big thing in Go where you don't have to say it's a variable, but that F variable there, that sets the F variable to a string RITSEC. And that's used a lot in Go from what I've used. If and switch statements, they're pretty standard in Go. Starting with the if statements, they're pretty standard: if, else, The only special thing and reason why I included that is because you can declare the variable within the first if parameters, and then you can compare through the entire statement, and that'll allow you to kind of condense and make more of a. It will condense your scope a bit for your variables, if that's what you want. Switch statements are pretty standard in Go as well to most other languages. You have your variable that you're using, your cases, and then your default. So now this is where it starts to get more Go specific things. So you have your basic arrays where you can set a specific length on an array, and it will allow you to store only, like, for example, in that A variable, 5 values in it, and you can set the values just like as you would in most other languages. Slices are what are really cool Go specific things. I'd like to compare it to a list in Python. So to make a Go slice, what you do is you use the make command. You give an example of either it being 1 or 2 dimensional, the variable type, and then how long you want the initial slice to be. And this for example, the S slice has 3 values, with the default value of it being a string, so they'd be empty. You can append to slices. You can delete slices. There's some weird slice manipulation techniques you can use, and I'll give resources for that at the end. But right there, that is giving a slice of, it's adding to slice S, the character D or the string D to it. And then in that L variable below it, it's actually declaring an L variable with all the values. It's with a slice, but using the slice values from 2 to 5. So that's a nice notation that they have in Golang, and it's extremely easy to manipulate these slices. And then a map is just like a dictionary in Python. It's formatted almost the same way as you would a slice. You can declare using the make command or the make function a variable saying it's a map with the key. It's a string key, and the value is going to be an integer. So right there below that, I then give key 1, or I just did K1 is equal to 7. So now M with the value or the key of K1 will be 7. You can delete it just using delete. You pass which map you have, and then passing it the value. I'm sorry, the key that you'd like to delete. And then there's N right there. That last variable is another way you can declare a map without using the make and having the values already set in it. And it's like a JSON type format setting those. Now for functions. Functions are pretty simple in Go. You have your standard keyword saying it's a function, the name of the function, the parameters you have passing to it, and then you declare its return value, that being an int in this case. You can also surround them in parentheses and do multiple returns like in Python. This will allow you to return a tuple or multiple values from a method, which can be extremely useful at times, especially when we get into Goroutines in a second here. And then you got your inline functions or your anonymous functions where you can say func, and then you can give it its parameters, tell the return type. So this will actually, you can put anything you want in this function, and this is a very powerful tool in Golang. So you can pass it the variables you want to give it, and then it will run anything in that function. I just have a simple, it returns a bool if it's I is less than j, but it can be anything in there. You can add any logic in there. You can actually even make it a Go routine, which we'll get into later. And that could be a very useful technique in Go. Now for structs, if you've worked with C before, any C-esque languages, you probably are already a little familiar with structs. A struct, for those who don't know, is a variable, or it's a data type that holds multiple variables within it, and you can either access it in certain languages as a dot operator. So in this case, we have a book struct. So you could do book dot title, and it would give you the title, or I believe in C it's book, and then you do a dash like greater than sign, it makes an arrow, and then title, and it'll give you the title of that book. So this is a good way to, structs are very big in Golang. It's a good way to store a lot of your values. And then the function following that is what we call an interface. If you're unfamiliar with those, you can call a function off the structure. So if I do, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't change it to book. It still says new person. It should say new book. So I'm going to say new book. If I were to do book.newBook, it would generate a new book taking the title and the author as the string, and it returns a pointer to the book structure. So this will allow you to set a variable to be a book. So the function itself takes in the name, and I didn't change the person either there on that example. Oh, well. It takes in that title, and it would set it to be the title, and it takes in the author, and it would set it as the author, and it would return a pointer to the book. And if you're unfamiliar with pointers, it will return the memory address to that, which is how you need to use data in Golang, similar to C. So that's why I say it's a very much a C and Python-like language, because it has pointers and structs and all of the other stuff such as that. And then it also has a lot of Python mechanics as well. So now kind of getting into Goroutines. Goroutines are very different. You can relate them to be more of think of them as a thread in other languages. So it's pretty much just a lightweight thread. So these will allow you to run functions at the same time. So stepping into the code on the left is a basic example of a Goroutine. So going through the main, it's a direct call to the function, the first call of f. And then the second one is go f. So that starts a Goroutine with f. And what that does in Golang is once it hits that, it's like you're starting a thread in another language. So it runs f in a separate thread and then continues on in main. So as it's running f at the same time, it's then also running go with that anonymous function I was talking about earlier. So that anonymous function takes in a string, and we're passing in going to that anonymous function. So at the same exact time, pretty much, the program is running the function f and the anonymous function that we've declared. And then the program's going to sleep for a second, and then it's done. So you might say, okay, well, how is that helpful? What if I need to wait for my threads to finish? Well, that's exactly what wait groups are for. So a wait group in Go is pretty much it's like join. It's like joining in other languages. So it allows you to wait for the Goroutines to finish by adding the wait groups to a single wait group variable. So if we take a look at the code on the right, we actually declare wait group is the first thing in our function. So you have to call the library sync and then wait group, and that allows you to declare the wait group. And then you start 5 threads or 5 Goroutines of the worker function. With that, every time we run it, we add it to the wait group, and then we start the Go worker, passing the wait group variable into it. So Go knows to keep track of this function and this thread that's running, the Goroutine that's running. Once all of them are started up, we then call wait group, or the variable wait group dot wait, and it will actually wait for the completion of every single Goroutine. So this is a way that Golang does threading. And then, so this is how you would do the multi-threaded programs in Golang. It can get a little confusing when you have Goroutines that call Goroutines or other functions that call Goroutines. You need to make sure that you manage your Goroutines properly. A lot of the libraries, since it's a newer language, sometimes don't use Goroutines in the most standardized way. So you do have to be careful of other libraries calling Goroutines that you might not be aware of. And then also another mention before I move on, you can see there's a defer in the worker function. There's defer wg.done. So that's calling wait group done. That's letting the wait group know that this Goroutine is finished. And I'll talk about another way on the next slide to telling that the Goroutine is finished. But when you call defer in Go, it's an extremely, extremely useful thing to use. Instead of calling a cleanup, like a go-to cleanup in C, for example, you can use the defer function. And what defer will do, it tells Golang, even if something went wrong in the function, say there's an error, for example, I know it's only a print function there, but for example, if say it was a custom function we wrote and we passed the wrong variables to it and it threw an error. This will tell Go that it needs to still run the deferred all the deferred variables or functions that you have put the keyword defer in front of before the function exits, even if there's an error. So this is a really good way to call a cleanup or close file handles or anything else that you have open. So if this crashed, no matter what, at the end of the function, it's going to call wait group done. So no matter what, the wait group will be finished. So now we're going to get into channels. I don't fully understand channels, so I'm going to just share the knowledge I know on channels. So channels are pretty much just pipelines that can connect to concurrent Goroutines. What this pretty much means is that you can send data between Goroutines so that they can actually talk to each other. So in the first example is what is a channel. This is a basic example of a channel. So we made a channel that sends strings back and forth, and the channel's variable assignment is messages. So now we call an anonymous function with that is actually a Goroutine, sending the string ping into the messages. You can actually send data into channels and wait for channels to be read. So now that we sent this ping to messages, the MSG := variable is actually going to wait until it gets a response from that channel, and it's going to, for example, we have here ping. It's going to assign the string ping to that MSG, and then the print function that we use will actually print ping. So that's kind of how they work. And then we can use these as another way to tell if a Goroutine is finished. So if we look at the other example, we have done, that we declare a channel that's a Boolean and it's a size 1, and it's going to pretty much pass a Boolean value between the channel. So we're going to start the Goroutine worker, passing it the channel it needs. And then it's going to do all the logic in that Goroutine. It's just printing and sleeping right now. And then once it hits the very end, it's going to pass the value of true to that channel. And then down there at the bottom of our main, that syntax is going to wait until that channel receives any information. So since we pass true, once it's done sleeping, that's when the program will finish and it will continue running your main. So they are a hold. Those are a hold, and they wait until certain things are done. And you can do a lot of complicated things with switches and how you pass values around, and they get kind of complex. This is more, I'd say, the complex advanced things of Go that I still haven't gotten a handle on. It's definitely more of a Go specific thing from what I know. So these are the struggles. This is the struggle that I had the most, was the Goroutines and the channels. The rest of it, I feel like, is a pretty self-explanatory language. So these are the resources that I used when learning. I used Go by example, taught me a lot of, that's where a lot of these examples were from. I changed some of them up to fit the presentation. As you saw, I kind of messed some of them up. But that was how I learned the basics. Exercism.io is a really good way to practice a lot of languages. I used it a lot for practicing Go and just learning how to do Goroutines, data structures. They have a lot of, I wouldn't say capture the flags, but they have a lot of tests on there. And what you do is you write your program out and then you run it against their tests, and it will tell you if you passed or failed. So it's a really good way to actually get some hands-on experience with working with data structures in Go or other just Go-esque functionality. And then also tour.golang.org is a way to practice online as well. So now I will attempt to answer any questions, and I see there are already some in the Twitch chat. So
do you want me to read them to you, John, or
I got them pulled up. So languages like Python usually have a lot of libraries, API to Go have that sort of thing as well. Yes, Go has a lot of different libraries and APIs that a lot of people have used. There are Go docs for most of these libraries. I've found in working with them, some people don't code them as well as others do. There are some really, really good libraries that I've had a fantastic time using and taking advantage of. And then there are some other ones that I found have broken or haven't been updated, or the docs weren't quite correct. You just have to look at the docs and look how credited the Golang project is. I know I used a WebSocket library before, and there's a lot of libraries out there. You just have to simply Google, and there's a lot of libraries that interact with a lot of different things. Yeah, somebody commented that Goroutines and all that get complicated. Yeah, they do get complicated. I still don't fully understand it, but they are easy to work with once you get the hang of it. Actually, working with them makes a lot more sense, in my opinion, than just me talking about them. Are there any questions in Discord?
I'm checking right now. Yeah, I guess not.
All right, everybody. Well, thanks. If you have any questions, feel free to ping me. I might direct you towards a couple other people who know Go better than me, but I'll try my best.